my wife is not the same race as me. So
Right.
Right.
she was very much taught to not look at color, you know. And I think I'm just even wondering as a parent if yay, that's great that they can see beyond color, but shouldn't they also be educated on color? And if it's not good enough to say my kid doesn't see color, like how can we make it to like, yeah, my kid sees beyond color but understands the plight of this and that. Like how do we balance that?
I would just say that first, I think why I would say why adults have this all life matter mentality is because as a child they were taught not to see color, you know,
Yeah.
and I think that a lot of times we can't, especially as Christians, because we're supposed to love everyone, you know, that's kind of our DNA. And I think we kind of, and that's why I talked to you about like going to church and going to a predominantly, you know, white environment, even though it's multicultural, but having, you know, a white leadership, there's white leadership predominantly. So having probably the 14 years I've been in that church, not hearing one sermon about racism or not one sermon about race or color is alarming. And the thing is, I've never even thought about it until now in 2020 that
Wow.
we've never really talked about it ever. Like that's never been an issue. And so I just think that when it comes to kids, I think it's important to teach your kids to see everybody the same. I don't think there's a problem with that, but we have to let kind of tell them like, hey, there are differences.
Yeah.
There are times, and then kind of slowly but surely teach the history on what has happened prior, the past. They need to know the past sooner than later. We don't want to wait until they're adults and then are realizing, what, this happened to Black people? This happened to Black people? What?
Right.
Like, no, like I'm really kind of want to fight for schools to have an African American course
Yes.
at schools that they need to teach, because I think it's just super important at this point. I think it's or at least like a African American unit in the history class or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that they can teach.
Exactly.
Because it is super important that Black history is it's just important. It's just something that people need to know, and it's not just a cute month in February that we just celebrate and like, woo, yay. But no, it's like this is really happening. Like, and it is so funny. Like history is repeating itself, you know, and that's the saddest part. Like we compare the civil rights movement, the Jim Crow, you know, the Brown Board. Like you compare those to now, same situation, but Black people can have more of a ability to speak up than before.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
there'll be like 2 or 3 Black people that will speak up because they're brave in the 60s. Now you got like a whole like army of Black people speaking up because they do have a right to speak up. But it's still happening. We're still being silenced. We're still, you know, getting those, you know, that hate or that misunderstanding. So yeah, that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah. Bonnie, your thoughts on how we can educate our children better?
Chris mentioned something that I thought was really cool, and my brain just went running with it. It would be really awesome if we as a country could start fighting for more African American education in our schools, because the majority of what I've learned about my own history, I had to learn on my own, or my dad forced me to watch movies that as a kid I was like, what?
Yeah.
Me seeing all this stuff now, I'm like, yeah, I know, that's it. So I think that that's a big part of it. The textbooks, it's like this much. It's like it's not even a whole section. It's like a unit, and it's like MLK fought for rights, and now Black people are free, yay! And it's like,
that's the gist of our history,
right? And or it talks a little bit about slavery, and it's like, oh, this was bad, but now we're better, yay! And it doesn't go into a lot of things that my friends, like, for instance, there's this video, and I might send it to you. It's on social media, and it's like how to explain white, and I'm afraid to say the words, I don't want to offend anyone, but white privilege. And it talks about how it's not even playing fields, and never has been. And so if your students, not necessarily elementary school students, but who knows, they could start teaching this at a young age as well. It was very hard for us to make it out of the ghettos and the hoods because they had a thing called redlining. And I'm not even going to get into that, but it made sure that we weren't able to get loans in certain neighborhoods and move into certain places. So it kept us in these ghettos. There's other things that, there's just so many things that are left out of our nation's history because it doesn't look good on our government. It doesn't look good on those in power. And that's a hard pill to swallow. And I think that's why it's so hard to initiate and do these conversations, because it's hard to look back. Like if I was white and I had to admit like all, or face like all the things that we've done, I'd probably have an overwhelming amount of guilt or denial. It's a tough cookie to swallow, but I think that the actual education systems is the best way. And then I look at how I raise my boys. One of them is Puerto Rican, clearly, and one of them is darker than me. And I don't think that I have to do anything really special about raising them. It's just the same way that you teach them about anything else, about oranges and apples and how you eat this and how you eat that. You just teach, especially Kristen, because she's amazing. You just teach them from your heart. And if your heart isn't, I mean, it kind of starts at home first. Parents need to educate themselves first. And as they learn, you know how to best reach your children.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I also think too, it's not good enough to have good intentions anymore. You know what I mean? Right. Like it's just not, you're going to have to purposely kind of do this and walk through that educational component. Now, Chris, you said something that kind of goes into my next discussion here about, you know, you went to church, you didn't hear a sermon or a topic on this. I think if you asked like 99% of the pastors out there, I think they would say, oh my gosh, yes, I preached on that. I preached on all of those things, right? This is my viewpoint. There's a lot of people who say that the church has been silent on this issue. Personally, I don't think necessarily the church has been silent. I think the communication has been ineffective, which again, it comes from good intention, right? Because, you know, it's not good enough just to have good intentions. As a pastor, I want to ask you this. What do you want to hear from me? What do you want to hear from your faith leaders? Because, I don't know, like, what can we say that would actually register, you know, with our Black brothers and sisters?
As far as the I think that I saw a post the other day and it talked about, and it shows, you don't hold it back. So if you truly love me, when there's something plaguing my community, you don't dance around it for the sake of offending anyone else. If I'm in love with someone and there's something that is going on in their life, it's important to me. And you all know me, I'm going to be vocal about it. And that's just all I'm asking about. We're vocal about a lot of issues. We're vocal about tithes. We're vocal about homosexuality or not. We're vocal about abortion. We're vocal about so many things. But this issue, these are actual people in your congregation that lead your worship, that lead your children, that are an integral part of your congregation. And it's not okay to just kind of tiptoe around it because you don't want to offend everybody. Because what that tells me is you don't care about offending me. And that hurts. Like, I understand that they may make up more of your population, but you are only perpetuating the cycle that our opinion is not as valid.
Wow. Right. So with that though, like what can I say? I mean, I've done sermons on racism and things, and I've had Black students come up to me and say that was so awesome, and they thanked me. And then I had non-Black kids come up to me offended, saying I should have said this, I should have said this, I should have said this.
Like more?
Or I don't know, like more, like more like what? Or I didn't choose the right words correctly. But besides saying, by the way, racism is wrong, because no duh. Because if you really believe the Bible, and if you really believe Scripture, racism has no place in a Christian's heart. I don't know. I'm looking for like what can I say that I can connect with my Black community, with my Black congregants.
I steer clear of telling people what they should say, but I feel like everyone knows in your heart. I feel like people know what they should say, but it's just hard to do. And as a leader, that's your job, is you have to do what's hard to whom much is given, much is required. And if you're
Yeah.
given a congregation of lives to influence, that's pray and ask for wisdom. I don't always know
Yeah.
what to say.
I never want to leave something on the table to be
I feel like
perceived as.
Right.
I feel like a communication with people of color or minorities or whatever the topic you're going to talk about first, consult someone first, and then or have a group of people like, hey, this is going to be my sermon this Sunday. This is what I'm going to touch on. Is there anything I should add, or is that offensive, or is that too much? Wait for next week, something like that. Because every congregation is different. Like the way that Pastor Rick Warren talks to his church in California that is super progressive is probably going to be a lot different than the way we could talk to some of our smaller churches here. So I would steer away from saying everyone has to say this. Like New York, Carl Lentz can go all out like that because it's New York. But at the same time, you know your congregation. So I think that just talking with us speaks multitudes. It tells us right off the bat, I want to hear you. Not I'm going to speak for you and hope it's okay.
No, that's real. And really, like if there's anything I can say to any pastors, or by the way, any future pastors, because I know a lot of students are watching this, any future pastors, is when you delve into this, please, for the love, before you go up there and talk about racism, talk to some people who are experiencing that, because even like 2 or 3 years ago, and Chris knows this, Christopher, he helped me with the message, because my first draft wasn't really that great. Like, again, good intention, but the correct words weren't necessarily there. And I had to go back to that sermon about 2 or 3 times, rewrite it just to make sure. So please, pastors, please talk to your Black congregants during this issue. But anyway, sorry, Christopher.
I'll say this too. Like, I think a lot of it comes from fear. Like, it's just the fear has to go away. You cannot be fearful to stand up for what's right. And I think a lot of times too, we confuse these issues right now as being political instead of being a human issue.
Amen.
And I think that's the biggest issue. Like, it goes from Colin Kaepernick kneeling. We made it a political issue. It's not a political issue. It was never a political issue in the beginning, but we decided to make that a political issue just to justify our case for it, you know?
Right.
And I think that the sooner that white Christians see that we are just hurting, we're human beings just like you, and we're hurting, and we need attention, tender love, and care, the faster the process of change is going to happen.
Amen.
And I think the pastors, as our leaders in the church, have to kind of make that process move along. You know, they are the catalysts. You know, and if they are not going to do that, then we're not going to get any type of change going. So I just think pastors don't need to be fearful anymore. I think a lot of I'm going to a church right now that's very small, predominantly white church, super white. It's like barely like maybe 10 Black people that go to church. Me, one of them. And so like it's so crazy that they're so passive. They're so passive, and they're so afraid to say anything. They're so afraid to offend, which regardless of what you say, you're going to offend somebody. Regardless, you just got to just throw that out. You're going to offend someone, you know. But
that's real.
It's about it's about being on the right side of the fence. Like, you have to, and I think a lot of times, like, yes, we have to pick and choose our battles as well. But at the same time, it's like, do you? And I'm being personal, like, and I kind of said a post recently about like how I felt about things, but I'm like, if I'm, leading worship for you, if I'm paying tithe, if I'm serving your congregation, if I'm leading your students, and I'm a Black man that feels hurt and have pain, that what this current situation is, how is it, and it's affecting me, like, I should count on my pastor, regardless of what race they are, to have my back.
Yeah.
Because I go to your church. I put time into your church. I invest into your church. You wouldn't have a church if you didn't have half the people going to your church that are investing and putting their time in. So,
Of course.
you know what I'm saying? Like, we can't neglect that. Like, you wouldn't, like, a lot of people, Black people, are hurt and needing a light. We need light. We need hope. Anywhere
Amen.
we can find it right now. Anywhere we can find it, we need it. And so the church is supposed to be the example. They're supposed to be the place that we don't even have to question that we can go there, you know? But the fact that there are some churches that don't get it and they don't want to get it, that's more disheartening than some random non-believer that want to be hateful all the time. And I just think that that's more effective to me, because you want everything else from us, but you just can't accept us that we're hurting.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, fear is a lot of it. Honestly, and you notice because I got over it, but I was a little bit afraid to even do a video like this. Only because, like, great, somebody's gonna take my words out of context and they're gonna dox me and then all this kind of stuff. So I think the fear is there, and I think you're absolutely right. You might offend somebody. I'm pretty sure we just probably offended Antifa for saying that what they're doing is, you know, bashing things, you know, is probably a wrong thing. So, but I don't know. But you have to get over that fear in that.
Right.
Well, I want to add something too. Could I, again, as I'm not Black, I'm not a Black pastor, but I am still a pastor. Can I encourage my Black students to help their white friends, to help their white pastor specifically, or sorry, I hate saying white, I should say like non-Black, whatever. Everyone knows what I'm saying, okay, whatever.
Right. Yeah, we're good.
Place.
We're good. We're adults.
But like to a church that's going through that, I think what that church needs is a strong Black voice who can speak up. Maybe not on a public platform. Like I don't think, I don't know, if a pastor says something wrong, I don't think it's necessarily the greatest idea to put them on blast on social media. But an email, a heart-to-heart, a schedule, a pastor, can I please talk to you about this? Can I at least say that? Like as a non-Black pastor, can I encourage my Black students to do that and be help other non-Black people understand?
Absolutely. I mean, the same way that I reach out, like I said in my video today, at the end of it, I was in tears. I was like, my white friends, I need you. Like, I can't do this fight with just Blacks. Like, this has to be a community event. And so, yes, you can. As their spiritual leader, you can be like, to my students of color, like, we need your help. Educate us, help, like, what do you need? What kind of support do you need so that you can be active in your community to help better your community? Like, we're a family. So at the end of the day, it would just be great if we could just act as a family, the same way you tell your sister something, the same way you tell your brother, because that's what we are, brothers and sisters. So sometimes we overcomplicate it.
Yeah, exactly. And really what I hate to see right now is the enemy using this to sow divisions in the church, when this is the moment we need to unify. Call people out when they need to be called out, 100%, but do so like as a brother and sister in Christ, you know, like with that love and compassion. So
well, I want to add on to that, because
yes, please.
I think right now it's been a war with the private versus public, right? Like, I think a lot of people are mad that, I know I've got a lot of, you know, people talking about how like the posts are whatever, like you shouldn't post like your frustrations and your hurts on social media. But at the same time, reason why I believe that I think we need it is because a lot of times in private, you can do whatever you want in private. You can be dismissed. You can say, you can kind of just whatever, and just kind of like, oh, I said my piece, and then go publicly on a pulpit and say, well, I dealt with everything from all the people that had all the issues, and just not even know that this person didn't answer anything that this man or this person had the issue about. Now, I will agree that there's some posts that I've been reading that are disrespectful.
Yeah.
Just straight up disrespectful, regardless of how hurt this person is, regardless of how painful this time is. There have been some things that you probably shouldn't say on social media. But I think, because I'm speaking from experience because I was doing it, but I would say from you have to speak from yourself. I think it's better for the white pastors or the white staff or the white Christians to understand, if instead of generalizing Black people, I'm a person that you love, right? Like Bonnie was saying earlier, I'm a person that you love. I'm a person that you care for. I'm your friend. I serve you. I want you to hear from me personally how I feel about the situation instead of generalizing it, because that's probably, they're so quick on the attack mode that, oh, all Black people this, all Black people this way, and so I don't want to hear it. But when you kind of more, it's all about communication. You know what I'm saying? It's all about like kind of maybe breaking it down and be like, you love me, right? But like, I feel personally attacked because I feel like you don't have my back as someone that I believe supposed to have my back. And like, especially right now when I'm Black and no one knows what I'm going through but me, you know, and you know, you can't relate. You are very like, especially pastors, you're very anointed. You can preach, you can sing, you know, serve, you can love, but you can't be Black. That's something you can't do. That's something that you can't, that's one thing you can't do. So you can't teach that. You can't, you know, preach on that. You have to listen. You have to listen and be willing to listen. A lot of Black 100%. People are scared to speak out because they will get that backlash of like, oh, well, I'm not racist, so it doesn't matter. Well, I'm not racist, and racism is a sin. And that's another thing. Like, they preach on the racism is a sin part, and that's I did my good deed for the day. Racism is a sin. I did it. You know, and it's like, no, it's more than that. It's like, we're hurting right now, and you need to address the people.
You need to address
people
not only
as humans.
Right. So, like, addressing the sin, obviously, but also addressing the hurt caused by that sin. I think it's so important. But
which is the people that you care about. Right.
I mean, I will say this, and then I want to kind of move on to a different topic here. So I'm an imperfect person, and you're right. I can't be Black. I can't. I want to go in a pulpit and preach against racism and preach for the love of the Black community. But I'm saying this to my students, though, probably more than anything. Like, if I said something that didn't come off right, that didn't seem correct, it would 100% break my heart to see that a student, Pastor Chris said this. You know, like that'd be so painful for me, because I feel like, well, I don't have a chance to defend myself or even have a dialogue. You know what I mean? So I don't know, if in my congregation, y'all, if you ever have a problem with anything I say, please come talk to me. You don't have to. I don't know. And I think pastors also should have that open door. They should communicate that, like, and I think it's an access point. Like, I feel people latch on to social media because that's an open door per se. But pastors, we need to communicate that, hey, there's an open door to my office too. So please come talk to me. And when people think that door is shut, of course, stuff is going to happen. But anyways, that was my whole thing. Bonnie, do you have something to add? I saw the wheels kind of turning in there.
Yes. Like 100%, like, when you have issues with people, you should take them to them. So I'm going to, like, from personal experience, I can't speak for everybody else or why they felt the need to speak out on social media, but it's kind of like the riots and the protests. When you try to speak up for so long and people don't listen to you, what can you do? When you've gone to people before and expressed your concerns about things and they were either minimized or you weren't made to feel like you mattered, especially when you've given so much. And when you are no longer like a member of someone's congregation, you don't feel like that is your pastor anymore. And when you put stuff on social media, it's kind of up there for everyone. Like, I get a lot of negative comments on things that I write, and I expect it because I put it on social media. If I didn't want comments, then I turn the comments off. But on another note, when people comment, I don't delete them. I either message them myself and I talk to them about it. So I feel like when you post, like, part of leadership is admitting that you're wrong. When COVID first started, I was a loudmouth about, oh, well, I'm young and I'm fit and I'm healthy, so I'm not going to catch it, so I don't care. And then after I looked into it some more, I was like, oh, I can be fit, young, and healthy and still pass it to people that aren't healthy.
Yeah.
So I need to think about other people. So then I
Right.
retracted my statements and started to be more pro social distancing. No, you guys can't come swim in my pool. No. And it was embarrassing that I was so vocal at first, but I reeled it back in when I learned better. And that's all that we can ask for. You guys aren't always going to say the right thing because, again, you're not Black. I'm not always going to say the right thing. I'm human. We're all human. We're going to mess up. But part of leadership is being able to humble yourself and be like, hey, I messed up. And that I seen that this weekend as well. And I was like, great job. That's all we want. Like, we're not asking for perfection. We're asking for, like, if you mess up, don't try to cover it up. Come confront it. Because that's what we're expected to do.
Of course.
It's preached that, you know, that we're supposed to take ownership of our actions and be humbled. And that's really vital to me to have as a leader. Like, you may not always understand me as a Black female, but you know what, if you didn't speak on it right, or as a Hispanic female, or anything, just own up to it, fix it, keep it moving. That earns so much more respect from us.